the most important thing is to always be you in all facets of your life. So that's both personally and professionally, because your values should align.
So joining me on the line today, I've got Rebecca Kingsford from Create Careers. Welcome to the call, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me, David. How are you?
Yeah, going really well. You know, just navigating, like we're in Melbourne here, and obviously we're in this extended lockdown. So getting used to working from home and starting to really sort of adapt onto the technology. So maybe tell us a bit about your company, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, of course. So I'm the CEO of Create Careers. So we're an executive search and full service recruitment agency. Our specializations are across executive search, as well as digital marketing, PR, your IT, big data science, cybersecurity, and fraud, risk and compliance. So in terms of the clientele we work across, that's small to medium sized organizations, as well as your larger enterprise as well.
Fantastic. And I suppose being in the digital space, it's a bit of a sort of bonus with the way things are going, because there's so much acceleration in that space at the moment.
Most definitely digital and IT. So yeah, very grateful that these are our areas of specialization for sure.
Yeah, great. So let me ask you, what are you doing as a business owner to navigate the current environment?
God, I must admit, there's multiple facets in terms of that question itself. I mean, for us as an organisation, it's been very much so us reconnecting with, of course, maintaining the connection, I should say, with our existing clients itself, as well as our candidates, and also with our team members. I mean, now more than ever, like, connection is so important, and for us, it's been so important to ensure that with our clients itself, we're just checking and seeing how they're going. Many organisations have been significantly impacted given the current pandemic itself, and some of those organisations had to pivot as well in terms of their service offerings for their clients. And just thinking of some of the agencies that we work with, some of their clientele has been heavily across sporting, retail, lifestyle, entertainments, even some of the event space as well, being an arm of their businesses. And given the enforced social restrictions, like, that's heavily impacted their business. And even in particular, I'm thinking of one who are actually about to close their doors, but like, obviously because of the government being able to provide some, a bit of support itself financially, they've had to repivot their offerings. And like, gratefully, they've invested a lot of time in business and development, but their areas now have been focusing heavily on the digital arm of their business. And luckily, they've been able to get a few wins, and I'm going to say stay afloat, given everything going on.
So it's been said that the last 6 months, technology has been implemented at a rate that equates to about 6 years. So what's your thoughts on that? Well,
it's interesting because, in terms of, technology is the future, right? And a lot of organisations that have had, like, I'm going to use the word struggled at the beginning of the first lockdown, they didn't have those business efficiencies and processes in place. So it wasn't so much of a streamlined process for them. Whereas those that already had that infrastructure in place, it was more of a seamless transition. So it's interesting. In terms of positions and things like that as well, most definitely some jobs will be made redundant, but in terms of like digital and technology, that's the future. So it's important for organisations to be educating and upskilling their staff members with this technology. And I truly believe it comes down to a candidate's attitude towards the situation, because at the end of the day, you can always train skills. You can't train the attitude aspect. Otherwise, in saying that, it's also important as well to make sure you've got that specialist within your organisation to be able to mitigate and just having those processes in place. It's actually essential for business, not only scalability, but survival with competition.
Yeah, great. So tell me a bit about the opportunities you believe are there for small business owners right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I would most definitely say, obviously, it's investing in digital and technology itself. Make sure you have that infrastructure in place. I would also say as well, it's interesting, working from home. I think a lot of traditional organisations always thought you need to have someone in the physical presence within, working all together. Whereas I truly believe the future of work is embracing flexibility. And flexibility is such a huge topic, so I'll focus on one aspect of it itself, but it's enabling team members to actually be able to work remotely. And if they choose to come into the office, like, that's if you decide to maintain a physical office space, which I think is important from a work culture perspective. But I really think that it's ensuring there's that flexibility and that option for their employees, as well as I believe that the future of work is also in co-working spaces and hubs like that. So think of the commons and things like that. I mean, not only is it great from like a networking perspective, being able to be with different businesses, but at the same time as well, I think that's the future of work, which is obviously save a lot of costs as well as a business owner in terms of having to, whether you're renting a place, like, you know, in terms of an actual office and things like that.
Yeah, fantastic. So tell me about, you know, on a personal note, what lessons have you taken out of this whole experience that we've been having?
Very good question. I would say personally, it's about like, at the end of the day, like work is important, but at the same time, there's other important aspects as well. And so like that's like well-being is essential. I mean, you're in Melbourne, we're Melbourne based as well. And of course, like whilst we recruit across all of Australia, but being Melbourne based and obviously the extended lockdowns and isolation and things like that, it's just important to check in on people and just ensure that they're actually okay, but also check in with yourself as well. So that's been really, really important for not only myself, I think also as well, it's about cutting out the noise, like the media and even what's going on with other organizations externally. Like at the end of the day, I truly believe like you create your own reality, but it comes down to it pretty much you are who you surround yourself with and who you speak with, of course, as well as in terms of like what you want to create in this world, you have full control of that. So it's kind of cutting out the noise and the media and things like that and just focusing on driving like positive opportunities.
It's a bit of a test, isn't it? Because the media has just amplified itself so much with this whole COVID thing that it's just become, it's almost like screaming at you all the time. Breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. And it's like, all right, you're telling me I need to shut this out altogether because it's driving me crazy.
Most definitely. And it's one of those things, it's like, I mean, it's important to obviously be aware of what's going on in the world, but at the same time, you can be aware without having it have a negative impact on you as well. So it's cutting out, I truly believe cutting out the noise, and sometimes it's the best thing to do is to detach from social media and things like that. Obviously it's great in terms of a business perspective, and if it's something that's going to educate you and upskill you, but otherwise cut out the noise.
Well, it's a thing like there's a level of self-discipline required, because you talked about balance and you talked about this importance. You know, people working from home can't distinguish between day and night. They can't distinguish between weekends and weekdays. And so
having boundaries, healthy boundaries within the workplace.
Yeah. So now it's become an awareness that people are going, I need to be very conscious about how I spend my time. I need to be conscious about having breaks. I need to be conscious about my health, all these sorts of things, right? And I think that it's an important distinction. Let me ask you, you've been in business for a while. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Very good question also. I would say probably the best thing is actually from my business partner who had mentioned this to me when we first started out. Yeah. He said the most important thing is to always be you in all facets of your life. So that's both personally and professionally, because your values should align in your day-to-day. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're human, and it's always continually striving and working towards being the best version of yourself, but it's being you in all aspects of life. And actually another one as well is that it doesn't really matter so much about like whatever people call themselves in terms of titles, things like that. In the scheme of things, it's irrelevant, because all that matters is we're all people at the end of the day, and it's about connecting with people as people. And so I always think like never be intimidated by anyone or things like that, because at the end of the day, it comes down to you and the value that you offer, and everyone starts from somewhere.
Yeah, I suppose that's why you chose going into sort of career, into recruitment, huh?
Recruitment, that's exactly right. And I mean, the great thing is you're chatting with like all walks of life, and at the end of the day, it's amazing to hear people's backgrounds as well and learn about how they've grown within their roles. And like anything, things do take time. We've got to educate ourselves. We have to invest in ourselves from a skills and development perspective, but it's about being around the right people as well that can foster that development and nurture it.
Brilliant. Now, let me ask you, are you a reader at all? Do you read books on business or personal development? Yep.
Yes, I most definitely am.
Awesome. What's your favourite?
Probably my favourite book. Yeah, I mean, there's a few that I absolutely love. I love like Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a fantastic read. but probably one of my favorites, and it's a little small read, it's The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. Yeah. It's fantastic. So it's not so much about just business success, it's talking about like creating inner success, and it talks about, I mean, they say there's different laws that govern the way that life operates, so to speak, but it's all about like working on your inner world, as that has a ripple effect in your outer world. So that's probably one of my favorites. Okay,
so tell me the best of the 7 laws.
Oh, I mean, there's heaps of them. There's like the law of cause and effect. There's they talk about can't remember everything from the top of my head, but they talk about like your law of Dharma, which is all about like your purpose in life. And there's I mean, it's been a little while since I've read it. It's been probably a good 5 years. So that's one that's definitely stood out. There's actually a book that I'm reading at the moment, and it probably would resonate with a lot of people, like, you know, operating businesses and things like that. It's actually called The 7, hang on, I've actually got the book here. It's called The 7, I hope you can see this, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, I haven't read the whole thing, so bear with me, but in regards to the first 3 chapters, one thing I loved is that the first chapter talks about how important it is that the only thing you can ever control is your response to a situation. Yeah. And it's a bit like this whole like pandemic, for example. The only thing you can respond to, the only thing you can have control over is your response to this situation. So, and that's where the true power lies from within. So rather than be reactive, be resourceful from within, but, you know, be more strategic.
You just held up my favourite book of all time.
Oh, really? Oh, there you go. I'm only like 3 chapters in, but it's fantastic. The first chapter, actually, to be honest with you, you never realise what's going on in people's lives as well. And what I absolutely loved is that I know he uses the example, and I don't want to give it away, the entire book for readers, so I highly recommend it. But when he talks about when he was on I think it was a train, and he was observing somebody sitting down with his children, or with their children, but the children were running amok. And the natural response to everyone else on the train, including his own, was, why are you getting frustrated in terms of the situation, how the kids were reacting. Mm. But then after he responded, after a bit of time, said, can't you see what your kids are doing? Like, aren't you going to control them? And then the response was, oh, sorry, my partner just passed away in hospital. It's probably why they're responding the way they are. So you actually never know what's going on in someone else's world. And I think that's having that, always being like compassionate and having empathy towards others, because you actually never know what people project isn't necessarily like who they are, but what's also going on as well. So you got to know all the pieces of information before you can actually respond.
Brilliant. So look, one last question for you, Rebecca. The number one piece of advice you give to people in business right now?
Yeah, for sure. I would 100% say that, I think a lot of organisations are trying, particularly smaller to medium-sized enterprise, trying to weather the storm, right? And you're wanting to remain in business. So I just think it's really important. There's, when you face adversity, obviously there's always that opportunity to be able to make it through, but it's about being surrounded by the right resources and not being afraid to ask for help. Like, for example, like speaking with business coaches, for example, or even being able to, like, if you've got a support, like a trusted advisor, things like that, speaking with them and implementing strategies that will actually help you manage and cope. Because this is only a means to an end, right? But it's essentially, it's important to stay afloat at the same time as well. So utilizing your network and taking advice is really important. Strategic advice, of course. I've got to put that in there.
Really asking for a hand and just sort of making sure you sort of look for guidance and sort of make the most out of a situation. So,
most definitely.
Awesome. Rebecca, thanks so much for your time today. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.